Going to be giving an overview of EndNote Desktop and EndNote Online for WCM access. So before we kind of get started, just to kind of give you an overview of what EndNote actually is, it is a bibliographic management tool, a citation manager, all of these things. But essentially it helps you collect and manage citations and then eventually write your manuscripts and create your bibliography. So how to get both of these things. There's a web version and a desktop version. The web version is free for everyone at WCM. The desktop version is limited to people with tagged devices. So if you do have a tagged device, you can download EndNote directly from the WCM App Store right down here. Just make sure you log in and you can download it directly from here. For the web interface, just go to myendnoteweb.com and sign up for an account. Just make sure that you are connected to WCMC Wi-Fi when you do it for the first time, not guest. This will make sure that you get all the other kind of perks and benefits that we pay for here at WCM. And you don't have to use your Seaweed to sign up for it. It could be your Gmail or anything like that. But just make sure, again, that you're signed up while you're on WCMC Wi-Fi. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit, kind of the best of both worlds for the web version and the desktop version. So I'm going to start with the web version. You can do most things on both. However, the desktop version definitely is a little bit more robust. But for kind of your basic reference manager tool, you can do most of that on the web version. I'll start by showing you how to import references into the web version. Okay, so if you're signed into your account, again, that's myendnoteweb.com. We'll pop into PubMed and we'll say that we want all 5 of these references to get imported into our web account. You just go to Send To and Citation Manager. It'll ask you if you want the selection, all results, etc. We're just going to stick with selection and create file. Okay, now just leave that downloaded file right there. Don't open it up. Go back into the web version and go to Collect and Import References. There's a little bit more steps to this, so it's not entirely seamless, but you'll get used to it as you use it. But first, we're going to just choose File. So that downloaded folder is right here at the top of my downloads. Click Open. And now we have to select an import option. So essentially we have to tell EndNote where we got this from so it knows how to read this file. So I have some of my favorites selected here already. So I'm going to choose PubMed NLM. But when you first start using this, you're not going to have any in this pre-populated list. So you have to go into Select Favorites and choose where you're going to be downloading them from. So for example, we got these from PubMed. So we want PubMed NLM as our import option. Then 2 just tells us where to import it to. So these are all my groups. So I'm just going to have it pop into this one and click Import. And you'll see the 5 references were imported into the Cochrane group. So if I click on here, it will take me directly to the group, and we can see my references that are in here. If you don't select a group, they will go into unfiled. As you can see, I don't have anything here right now, but if you choose not to select a group, it will go into unfiled, and then you can put it into a group. And I would recommend, as much as possible, sorting your references into groups. They're essentially folders or file folders for your different projects. It will just keep things much more organized. And as you go forward and you're working on different projects, you won't have to sort through your entire list of references. You'll be able to go back to your groups and find exactly what you need. To create a group, you go into Organize and Manage My Groups. And as you can see, I have a lot of groups. But if you go down to the bottom, it will say new group. And we can do, this will be test group 1. Okay. And if I want to share it, just make sure that this box right here is clicked, and then click manage sharing. Start sharing this group. So if you're working collaboratively, you can then share this group with someone so that you're working off of the same set of references. In this box, just enter whatever email address they use to log into EndNote. So when you're first logging in for the first time, whatever email you put in, that's what needs to be here. So if someone has their Gmail to log into EndNote, that's what you need to put here, not their seaweed. They won't get the group. You can also select permissions. So read only will only let the person obviously look at these references. Read and write will allow them to edit. And then just so you know, through this interface, through the web interface, attachments are not shared. So if you attach full text to any of these things, they will not be shared to the group. That's because of copyright reasons, according to our subscriptions. And then you just click apply. And then if they do not receive an email, that's okay. This group has already been shared with them. So if you go back to your main page and you scroll all the way down, groups shared by others, this is where they would pop up for your collaborators. Okay. So now I'm going to hop over to the desktop version. And this is version 20. This is the most current version of EndNote, but if you have a previous version, a lot of the workflow is very much the same. It just looks a little different in terms of, aesthetics. Before we go any further, I will please beg you to work off of one EndNote library. So this window is essentially my library. You'll see at the top, it is my EndNote library. You can essentially create however many libraries you want. However, you will most likely run into problems when you're working in Word, and Word won't be able to figure out which EndNote library you're working off of. You'll run into a lot of issues when you're trying to sync and things like that. So, as much as possible, try and work off of one EndNote library and just sort your separate projects into groups on the side. As I just kind of alluded to, you can sync your desktop and your web version so that they mirror each other. So for example, if you're working from home and you have your desktop version only on your work computer, you can sync the two so that you're working off of the same set of references. And you'll see that right up here. If you go into EndNote, Preferences, and go to Sync, you just want to enter your web account credentials and then your password. You can have it set to sync automatically so that every time you open your desktop version, it will sync with your web version. Just kind of keep in mind, depending on how many references you add, it might take a little while once you open the program, or you can just uncheck that and it won't. You'll have to then ask it to sync manually. So kind of similar to the previous workflow for importing references over back into PubMed, you're going to go through that same process. You're going to send to Citation Manager, but here it's a little bit easier. I can just click on this downloaded citation and it will open into EndNote. If for some reason that doesn't work, you can always go down to File, Import, find that downloaded folder, or I'm sorry, downloaded file. And then if you click into options, you'll see that similar thing that we saw previously. So your import options, again, you're just going to want to make sure that you choose PubMed NLM and it will be able to read the file. But we've got our references right here. If I want to create a new group, I just right click into this left-hand panel and I can create a group, or I can create a group set. So what a group set is essentially kind of it creates a hierarchy that you can create folders below. So for example, with this RCT update, I have subgroups below this larger group set. So you'll see when I import something, it automatically gets into imported references and unfiled. If we want to move this, just select everything and drag and drop into whatever group you'd like. So now it's been removed from unfiled and it is now in arthroscopy. Okay. You can also create references from a PDF. This depends on how the kind of metadata that's attached to the PDF. But for example, if you just have a folder of PDFs on your desktop, you can import that into EndNote, and EndNote will create, as much as it can, references based off of just those PDFs. So again, you go to File, Import. We're going to find the PDF that we want to import. And then in our options, again, we have to tell it where it's coming from. This is a PDF file or folder. So as I mentioned, you could do an entire folder of PDFs, or if it's just one, same thing. So click that one and import. And essentially what it did was it created a record based off of just the PDF. So you'll see this has a PDF attached to it because it has this little paper clip right here. So what that means is I can now look at the PDF that is attached to this record. You can see it's right here. If I go to open, it'll pop up right here. And so now what I can do all within EndNote is I can highlight, I can annotate, I can add comments, and it will save all of these, marking that I essentially put on this within EndNote. So you can kind of keep all of your research in one place. And I would recommend attaching PDFs as often as you can. It just kind of creates a more complete library for yourself. EndNote also has a really great feature that it will find full text for you as much as it can. So for example, if I pop back into here, and let's say I want EndNote to find PDFs for all of these references. You just highlight whatever you want. You can right click and find full text. It's going to ask me to log in through EasyProxy. So I just sign in with my WCM credentials. Click continue. And now if I scroll down to this left-hand bar, you'll see that it's searching for full text for 8. So what it's doing is it's going out against our subscriptions and trying to find what it can find full text for. It's not always perfect. We often will have a lot more full text than EndNote thinks we do. So if you don't find it here, that doesn't necessarily mean we don't have access to it. But it's kind of a nice way to just kind of bulk, give it a try to start. And if it does have it, you can see it found the full text for 2. And you'll see again, that little paper clip is right here. So we can just open up our PDF again. I found URLs for some. So that means if you just click on the URL, it will take you through to the PDF, and didn't find 2. Another thing that I would recommend doing before we jump into the Cite While You Write, which is the plugin for the Word document, is to find reference updates for everything that you're going to be using. So for example, if I am writing a paper based off of this arthroscopy group, what I want to do is see if there's any updates made to these records. So for example, if it was an EPUB ahead of print, I want to make sure that I'm using the most current version of the record that I can. So again, we're going to highlight whichever ones we want. You just right click and find reference updates. And I'm not going to do it now just because it might take a little bit of time. But essentially that will just see if, for example, if it was an EPUB, if it has now been assigned to an issue, it will update that for you. So it's just kind of a good habit to get into before you start writing. Okay. So now I'm going to pop into Word. And when you download EndNote, you should see this tab now appear in Word. If you don't, reach out to us and we'll walk you through the steps to get it to appear there. But this should automatically pop up because when you download it, it should prompt you to completely close out of Word so that it can install this plugin. And essentially, you just click on the EndNote toolbar at the top of Word, and you can start using any of your citations. I would recommend updating your version of Word as much as possible. Again, you can do that through the WCM App Store. Older versions of Word are not as compatible with newer versions of EndNote and vice versa. So as much as possible, you want to be working off of the most current versions of each program. So for example, we're going to start writing our manuscript. So we've got a really interesting sentence and we need to cite this. So all we need to do is just pop into Insert Citation over here on the left. And one thing that is maybe not as intuitive as you might expect, you need to now search for your citation. But when you do so, you can type in an author name, a keyword from the title, the year, something along those lines, and then click Enter. And then it will go out and search against your library. And depending on how many references you have in your library, it may be quite a few. Okay. And I'm going to select my reference and then click Insert. And as you can see, it adds my in-text citation as well as my final bibliography. So this would appear at the end of my manuscript. There's just no manuscript right now, so it's appearing right here. But right now I've got my style as Vancouver. This dropdown is my most current or my most frequently used styles, but if I want, I could select another style. And there's a bunch that are pre-populated, mostly organized by journal title. And if you don't find what you need here, you can just download new ones from EndNote's website. But for the most part, you'll be able to find what you need in their pre-populated sample. So right now I'm in Vancouver, which is a numbered reference. But for example, if I want to jump into Chicago author date, I can click that and it will automatically rearrange things for me according to the citation style that I've chosen. It will renumber things if you now then add a reference into the middle. If you're not seeing it laid out correctly, just click Update Citations and Bibliography. So for example, if you're going back and reinserting citations, click that and it will update the entire document. And that's pretty much it. You just do that for your entire manuscript. If you are working collaboratively, what you're gonna wanna do is export your traveling library every time you send this back and forth. So if, for example, I've received this Word document from my colleague and now I want to add citations to this, what I do is I go into Tools and Export Traveling Library. What this will do is create a small EndNote library of every citation that's been used in this paper. So if I want to then add things to it or edit it, I will use this traveling library to do so. It's not terribly intuitive, it's a little clunky, but that's the best way to work collaboratively with EndNote at this time. But EndNote needs to know that it's working off of the exact same citations, and that's why you would typically run into issues when you're working collaboratively with other folks. Before you send your paper off to a publisher, for example, you're going to want to break the link with EndNote and then convert this whole thing to plain text. So for example, right now, if I click on this, you can see it highlights in gray. That means that this Word document is still talking to EndNote. And a lot of journal submission sites have issues with EndNote's formatting and things like that. It will get wonky and it will just not look as you want it to. So we want to break that link with EndNote, but only when we're totally finished. So again, we're going to go back into Tools and convert to plain text. So it's going to prompt me to save this document before I convert it, which you always want to do because you always want to keep that live talking document to EndNote. And it will open up a now plain text document for us. So if, for example, if I click on this now, you'll see it's blue. I can go back into this and edit it however I want it. It is no longer talking to EndNote. These citations are no longer editable with EndNote. Okay. And that's it. It's a very powerful tool. There's a lot more that it can do that you don't see that I haven't showed you today. So if you ever have any questions, just always reach out to us at infodesk@med.cornell.edu. We'll be able to help you out. Okay. Thank you for watching.